A good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 3 of the AROC Racing League's Touring Car Championship for the second half of 2024. You guys have already been on board with some qualifying here this evening, but I'm joining in now for some of the action as well. We are, of course, at Silverstone for round 3 of this championship. Just over 12 minutes to go in qualifying now, and things are looking rather tasty, it must be said. We're on board at the moment with Paul Millman. He's in a bit of a battle with Steve Knight. Different in tyre compounds, but very similar in terms of lap times at the moment. So a tenth separates those two drivers. Are we going to see Paul Millman jump onto the onto the super softs rather to try and usurp Steve Knight, or are we going to see Steve maybe thinking if he can replicate the same time on a harder compounder tyre, preparing himself for the race a bit more? Not quite sure. We'll have to wait and see for that one. Go up to P4, and then we have Alan Matthews, 211.3 on the soft compound of tyre as well, about 2/10 down of David Chelly. And I'd like to say welcome, David, to the AROC Racing League. You have already competed in 2 previous touring car events, but unfortunately, both of which I am ashamed to say I missed. So we've had no touring car streams until this point in the season, so I do apologise for that. But David has been doing very well indeed. He is currently 64 points he's currently second in the championship with 64 points to his name, ahead of Colin Knief and just behind Andy Craker, currently leading this championship. And he's doing rather well in qualifying as well. Those super soft tyres helping him set that 211.1. Then we have Matt Daly currently running slightly further down the championship, but still a good effort nonetheless. P6, 33 points to his name, the same as Alan Matthews, and very close to the likes of Jack Hodson and Paul Millman as well. Currently P2 in this qualifying session now. It's 211.0 for Matt Daly. And then we go on board a familiar sight perhaps for some. The man on provisional pole is Colin Knief. Just over 10 minutes to go in this session, so anything can happen just yet, and that's a 2-minute 10.9 for Colin Knief there on the soft compound of tyre. Looking very close indeed at the front end of this field. It's going to make for an interesting race. I was actually at Silverstone last weekend for the BRDCC event there, supporting a very good friend of mine who is in the C1 Racing Club in the little Citroen C1s there, and that was certainly a spectacle to see those, shall we say, less than capable vehicles going around this circuit at full chat, particularly when the safety car was out, because the safety car in question was a much larger 3-litre executive car, and that was, shall we say, not at all strained by the idea of pootling around Silverstone, whereas the Citroen C1s under safety car conditions very much were. I don't imagine we'd have much of a challenge under safety car with these cars, though. The Giulietta WTCR, a more familiar car, just like we have in the single-seaters. We've gone to a more traditional car that we know quite well. Should make for some decent racing. Certainly got the specs for it as well. 340 horsepower going to the front wheels from that turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. 1.75-litre engine, of course, familiar to those who own a 4-seater Giulietta QV, or maybe even more rarely, something like a Brera Spider or 159 as well, the TBI engine late on there. 340 horsepower, as I say, good for 0 to 60 in the high 4-second range, and a very capable racing car indeed. You see those front and rear wings, plenty of downforce in the car as well, so it should make corners like the one we're looking at, Maggotts Beckett's, nice and easy to negotiate, or at least easy enough. I'm not going to take anything away from the skill of these drivers in how they navigate these cars around some of these circuits. So far, we have visited Monza and Singapore, and it's this round now that brings us on to home soil at Silverstone, a fantastic racing track, a bit of a mainstay of touring car racing, although maybe not so much these days, and particularly not the Grand Prix layout. So we're going for a slightly longer layout, 2-minute 11-second lap at the full Silverstone layout. Usually, you'd see the national. That's where I was taking part. That's where I was participating. Not even participating. I'll try that again. That's where I was spectating. That's the word I was looking for just a week ago. We're on board with Colin Knief at the moment as he heads through Vale and Club before he jumps back onto the throttle towards the end of the lap now, onto the renamed Hamilton Straight in recognition of that driver's fantastic achievements as he crosses the line in just a moment. That last lap at 2:11.1, so not quite there with his previous best so far. He does probably, well, he's provisional pole, so he theoretically or technically doesn't need to improve, but he's going to want to improve, really, if he wants to try and secure that pole position a little bit more. All it takes is a bit of a push on from Matt Daly, just like the one we've seen, a 2:10.982. Now only 600ths of a second separate these two drivers. It is a very close quarters indeed for Colin Knief and Matt Daly. A familiar position, it must be said. This is familiar territory now. Good to see we've got Guy Strawbrick joining the session. Guy was having some issues with his simulator rig. It looks like he's been able to get those resolved, hopefully, so he can get some laps in before the end of qualifying. We are seeing most drivers now jumping onto the soft compound of tyre. I suspect while the super soft is very capable, it's probably the case that the soft compound tyre is looking a little bit stronger later on into the lap. This is a long lap here at Silverstone. It's a high-speed lap as well. Plenty of opportunities for those front tyres to get just a little bit too over-exercised, get a bit too hot, lose grip, and be spoiled for the end of the lap. You do need a decent amount of front-end grip through the corners, the likes of Stowe, and also that braking zone through Vale into Club as well before you dart back onto the Hamilton Straight. All of that is fairly intensive stuff when it comes to the required grip levels, and the soft compounds are probably likely to last just a little bit longer into the session compared to the super soft. Just over 6 minutes to go then in this session, and so far it is certainly not secure for any driver in the top four. That is for sure. We're on board at the moment with David Shelley, third in this session at 2:11.1. He's just gone purple through the second sector, so perhaps either a setup tweak or just a nice, confident lap through the middle sector here. Let's see as he darts onto the brakes. Into Club he goes. A little bit apprehensive perhaps over the curbs, but goes back on to the throttle. I think this could actually have been converted into a bit of an outlap here, as he seems to have backed off ever so slightly. Potentially, no, the predicted lap time just looking a little bit out of kilter there. That last lap, a 1:minute 11.175. So by 7,000th of a second, that is slower for David Shelley, but it's looking very consistent, it must be said. That bodes well for the race coming up in a few minutes' time. We're going to go back aboard, though, with Paul Millman. He's on that super soft tyre, has joined Steve Knight in doing so, and is absolutely flying along, it must be said. Has found 1.1 seconds in comparison to his rival. He's looking very much in the mix now, is Paul Millman. Should be in a good position for the race in that midfield action to try and score some decent points and maybe capitalise if anything else happens further in front. We certainly saw that in the single-seaters. You know, that's a lot of assonance there. We certainly saw that in the single-seaters, though, with the Singapore round just gone by. It was certainly action-packed, and we saw some drivers who otherwise looked out of the mix all of a sudden finding themselves fighting for podiums. It was a very eclectic couple of races at Silverstone, but I think we're hoping for maybe a bit less crashing, but certainly plenty of action nonetheless here at Silverstone, and it usually does promote such a thing. It is difficult to forget when you see something like a Formula One car on the Silverstone circuit. It looks like a kind of average width circuit, maybe a little bit wider than some, but you do forget, especially when you're in person, just how wide this track is. It is absolutely huge. So when you got a more traditional road car, like, for example, the aforementioned French thing that I was observing last week, or something like even an Alfa Giulietta TCR here, it's a bit smaller than your average Formula car. It looks like an absolutely huge circuit. That's because it is. So there should be plenty of racing room as we head into the final few minutes of this session. Now, Colin Keefe still holding on to that session lead, still on that provisional pole, as we have Jack Hodson joining in on the action as well. So good to see getting a few more cars on the grid by the looks of things. Oh, maybe not, spoke too soon. It is Matt Daly who is on board. We're on board with at the moment as he heads in to Stowe. 600th of a second separating them, as I say. Some lovely visuals there with the grass on the side there. These graphics mods do work wonders in Assetto Corsa, but perhaps our minds aren't completely focused on Assetto Corsa anymore, of course, if you'll pardon the pun. Assetto Corsa Evolution, or I'll just say Evolution, is coming out in just a few, well, I'm going to say months, but let's say 2025. It could move anywhere within there, really. If you've been following along with my sim racing column in Alfa Romeo Driver, you will know that I've been going on for quite a while about the likes of the second Assetto Corsa, as well as Test Drive Solar Crown, as well as a few other titles, about how close their imminent releases and what it means for the game world and what exciting features they bring and how it might be received. And I kept having to, in the case of Test Drive, mention it because they kept delaying it, because it seems to be the thing that's done in modern sim racing. So I'll just say tentatively 2025, but it certainly looks the part. It does Assetto Corsa, and plus the trailer was some fantastic choice of cars in that as well. So let's see what the future brings. But for now, we are on the fantastic Assetto Corsa. It's been out for a few years now, and as I say, these graphics mods certainly perfecting the formula as things are looking good. We're on board at the moment with Matt Daly. Things were looking good on this lap, but a bit of a tricky lock-up for him through that corner as we're going to head now down towards Copse in just a second. Copse, an infamous corner I've mentioned a few times, where we've seen great drivers having a bit of a coming together in the past, but it's an important run, is the run through towards Copse, because you've got to absolutely nail Woodcote and the exit of Luffield as well. That can compromise you all the way down to Copse if you haven't got the timing just right, if you haven't got onto the throttle in just the right moment. And of course, if you lost speed through Copse, you're going to be suffering all the way into the braking zone through Maggots Beckett, where you've got to be a little bit braver to make up for things. So it is an important part of the lap there. Very technical circuit. Not the most, but certainly one you have to have two wits about you in order to negotiate. We're going to go on board with Matt Daly. We're still on board with Matt Daly at the moment as he heads down towards the aforementioned Stowe. Now, a puff of smoke from the car there as he asks the tyres to give absolutely everything that they've got with just over a minute to go in this session. Now, I should mention we are swapping to real weather effects these days, so it follows something a bit more similar to what you'd expect to see in live weather conditions, looking a bit more familiar to something like the flight simmer world. But as we see Matt Daly crossing the line here, it's a 2-minute 10.7 there, so a few tenths. They were all made up in the middle sector as well. The first and third sector actually slightly slower than his previous best, but that middle sector was absolutely electric for Matt Daly, and that sees him at the moment on provisional pole. That's a late change there by Matt Daly, showing what he's got. Now it's going to be up to Colin Keefe to try and take back that pole position. With just 30 seconds left on the clock, this will be Colin Keefe's final attempt at a lap here at Silverstone. He's got to make sure those tyres are warmed up well. He really does. As I was saying, the live weather conditions here, simulating what the track looks like at the moment. So it is 8 p.m. As we are streaming here in the UK. It's 10 degrees out ambient and 10 degrees tarmac temperature as well. That is nice and cold. The cars are going to have no hope of heating that up. They are only touring cars, and it's going to almost have a cooling effect. That might help later on into the race, but in terms of getting them warmed up for a hot shot quali, it's not the most ideal situation. Paul Millman crosses the line. He heads home 7th position overall. The timer does hit 0. It's going to be Colin Keefe coming across the line next, but we have Club to negotiate first. 2 tenths separate him and his rival. It's 2-minute 2 as we exit Club. It's just a case of full throttle now as we wait to cross the line for Colin Knief. He darts across the rumble strip and crosses the line. It's a 2-minute 10.8, an improvement, but not enough of an improvement for the man in the black, orange and white liveried car there. Commiserations, Colin, but still a mighty good effort. Less than 0.2 separating our top two in this session. A mighty drive there from our competitors. I am aware of the lack of engine audio. We will have that fixed before the racing commences. But let's see as David Chelly crosses the line in just a moment. 2 minute 11.3 to 2 minute 10.9 to beat. He doesn't beat it, unfortunately, but it was I was about to say it was very close. That was the predicted there. A few seconds down on that final attempt. So that is it in qualifying for David Chelly. As we see, I believe I believe Matt Daly actually was able to get out to set another lap. Let's see if he can improve it then as he comes across the line. A 2 minute 10.7 to beat. He doesn't improve it, but it's very close there. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. In the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, 0.004 of a second separate his best time in qualifying and his previous lap there. That is consistency. And as we know, consistency is key. I think we're going to be on for a great race here between our front runners here at Silverstone, rather, as we go on board with Alan Matthews. That looks to be an outlap for Alan. And likewise, Steve Knight dives into the pits as well. So that was certainly an exciting qualifying session. Let's hope that excitement continues as we get ready to jump onto the grid for race one here for round 3 at Silverstone. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, just under 10 seconds now until lights out. We had a few people rejoining the server, so let's get ready for racing as we have 6 red lights on the gantry at an early start for David Shelley there. That is a false start if ever I've seen one. He made contact with Matt Daly, so hopefully that hasn't also caused Matt Daly to have that same false start there. I'm not quite sure on the timing. We'll have to double check that. Great shame, though, not the start to the race that David would have wanted. It's Matt Daly who leads this race at the moment. David Shelley in P2. Colin Cleave had issues, had to leave the session, rejoined, has dropped down as a result, but is still fighting for it and fighting for it well by the looks of things. Currently, it is against Paul Millman, that fight, as he has Alan Matthews having a look up the inside as well. It's going to be a very close fight at the front as well as go on board with Matt Daly. David, I suspect, though, is going to have to jump into the pits at some point within the next couple of laps in order to serve some type of penalty, I would have thought. Let's see, though, as we have these two cars fighting very close together indeed. Then we've got Alan Matthews there. Alan Matthews trying his best to keep up with Colin Knief. He's just got past Paul Milburn, but Paul Milburn is certainly fighting it back. He is, as we see them now heading around Luffield. As I mentioned in qualifying, a very important corner complex here at Silverstone is the entry in to Brooklands and then the run through Luffield as well, particularly in a car which is certainly powerful, but not the highest powered machinery that we've got in our roster. As we go on board with David Shelley, it's going to be side by side. He has a look up the inside as he heads towards Maggot, thinks better of it. That's pretty sensible early on in the race. Let's not forget the tyres won't be very warm. It's 10 degrees tarmac temperature and the fuel load is going to be pretty heavy as well. The back end on David's car stepping out. That's never what you want in a front wheel drive car. The back end stepping out. It's certainly a skill to correct that, and it can be very scary indeed from inside the cockpit, as it's not an ideal state for a front-driven car to be in. We're on board, though, with Colin Knief half a second ahead of Alan Matthews, giving his impressive pace in qualifying. You might be thinking, where's Colin's pace gone? Why is he now fighting to maintain P3? Well, I can tell you that in just a moment, but we have David diving into the pits there. A great shape to see his race starting like this, but it will potentially bode well for that reverse grid race. Let's see how many positions he can climb in the 23 minutes remaining in this race. Let's have a look at someone else then as we go on board with Matt Daly. Matt Daly now has a bit more breathing room in this race, and then we dive down to P3, a few car lengths behind, and that is Colin Knief. Now, Colin is currently running on the medium compound of tyres, so he's decided that I don't think the softs are going to make it towards the end of this race. He's clearly done some race runs, or just has that intuition, given the amount of experience and skill that he has. The medium compound is going to be the safer tyre to go for. Now, I've probably sided with them, not that I am in any way, shape or form an expert, but my thinking is that those lower track temperatures are going to cost a lot in terms of grip. And yes, while it might mean that they are less prone to overheating, the soft compound tyre, with got cool tarmac underneath them, they're also going to have a lot less grip, and you're going to be sliding around. You want something that can afford to lose a bit more tread later on into its life, and I think that medium compound tyre is going to offer that extra bit of durability later into the race stint, and we could see Colin diving back into his own bit of comfortable form when everyone else might be struggling on the soft compound tyre. We're already seeing, though, that is the opposite at the moment. It is Colin struggling for a little bit of pace, although he seems to be getting there now, corner by corner. The temperature seems to be coming to the car, although that was looking very understeery, less than compliant as he headed into Cobbs there. He is going to be able to rejoin, but he's lost a bit of pace compared to Alan Matthews. Let's see now the run down to Maggot Beckett. It's Alan Matthews who's going to have the inside for the second phase of the corner, but well defended from Colin Knief there. That leaves Alan Matthews with a few questions to answer there. He backs out of it. The back end of the car looked a little bit squirmish almost, and he is able to carry on, but he's still in P3, and it's Colin Knief down in P2 now as we run down towards Stowe in just a moment, all the way down the Hanger Straight, a very high-speed section of this track, the highest speed. In fact, as we dive on the brakes a little bit now for Stowe, the right-hander, this puts a lot of energy, a lot of pressure through those front tyres. It is certainly not an easy corner to negotiate. I think that was a bit of headlight flashing from Alan Matthews there. It was. I like the tactics there, Alan. Good to see touring cars still deploying their intimidation tactics as was intended. There's a reason we have that button available to map in Assetto Corse, and I like to see it being used, to be honest, as we've got Alan Matthews now very much in the tow here at Silverstone. The tow is an important one in a lesser powered car. I saw that again at the weekend. It would make or break your lap if you didn't have the tow. It's not going to be quite the case here in these 340 horsepower Juliettes, but it's certainly going to make a big difference. I mean, in fact, they've got a big barn door on the back of the car that is going to be adding drag. It's certainly adding downforce, but also adding drag. And if you can find yourself a bit of already disturbed air to really dumb it down, if you've got that car in front of you punching its way through the air, making a hole almost, it's going to be a lot slipperier for you to follow behind. And I think that is the tactic that Alan Matthews is deploying at the moment. You see Colin is able to hug the inside line there. Now that can occasionally, depends on the car, that can not give you the most ideal line as you head towards the Lothiel part of the corner there, as the corner kind of switches back and gives you the inside line. So if you take that wider line on entry, it might be a bit more forgiving on the car at first, but might just allow you to feed into that second part of the corner quite nicely. I'm sure Colin knows far more about me when it comes to driving though, so I should probably stop talking about such matters as we're going to head through Copse now. And Alan Matthews still looking very close indeed, but let's have a look at what's going on elsewhere in the field. We are seeing a great battle here between Guy Swarbrick and Jack Hodson as they run down through Copse themselves. It is Guy Swarbrick on the defence. Good to see Guy being able to take part. Not only has he had setup issues, he's also under the weather at the moment, so get well soon, Guy, but good to see you. Certainly, I think, deploying the best tactics to get well soon, and there's a bit of racing. A bit of racing solves everything, as we see them heading now through Maggots and Beckett. There we got the rest of the field still quite close together, of course, heading down the Hanger Straight now, and there we have the advantage of that slipstream effect in good demonstration here from Jack Hodson as he darts out, has a look at the inside, heads into Stowe. It's going to be a case of who goes latest on the brakes. The answer to that one is Jack Hodson. Has he gone too deep on the exit of Stowe though? It is easy to do. It looks like he has as well. That is going to cost him in terms of time because of just how much extra distance he has to cover to get back on the track. It did cost him, but he's able to take the inside line heading into club anyway, and is able to maintain the position for the time being. Is he? No, he's not. Guy Swarbrick late on the brakes, going round the outside, able to take a defensive position on the second part of the corner, and that is Guy Swarbrick back into P5. There's going to be a great battle going on between these two. Let's see what's going on between Colin Keefe and Alan Matthews. Once again, these two still battling for the entire duration of that lap as well, heading through the loop here before you run on to the Wellington Straight. And there we see Alan Matthews poised and ready to try and fight for it, but it is well defended by Colin Keefe, it must be said. I should mention in all of this, David Shelley had those issues earlier on, had to dive into the pits, has been able to get back out on track and up into P4 already. A great recovery drive from the newcomer so far. He's actually just gone purple on the previous lap in Sector 2, and it's looking like another good sector in the first part of this lap as well. So David certainly very much on his marks well here and looking ready to fight. If he isn't able to fight for these podiums or race wins in race 1, let's see what happens in a reverse grid race, because I suspect he's going to be in the mix there as well. We're on board still with Alan Matthews as he's maintaining that around about 1 second gap between him and Colin Keefe. The gap between Guy Swarbrick and Jack Hodson has expanded ever so slightly, but it is Guy still in the lead of this battle at least, and breaking away ever so slightly in terms of their pace at the moment. It was a 2:16.0, 2:17.0 for Guy and Jack Hodson respectively. The best lap out of these two goes to Guy Swarbrick by about half a second as well. So Guy Swarbrick looking in control of this battle for the time being, but has actually just lost control there as we ran in to Maggots Beckett. Perhaps Guy going just a little bit too hot into the corner. Got it all wrong there. It's able to rejoin and carry on, which is the main thing, but has lost some time there, lost position as well. Guy Swarbrick down into P6 there. Commentator's curse coming into effect. There was a few seasons ago, I think, when we were last running the Tartus FA01s actually in the single seater, there was a period of time when I would seldom mention Guy Swarbrick because the commentary curse against Guy was so apocalyptically bad, it was just not worth talking about him because I'd ruin his race. Thought we were past that. Sorry, Guy, that's my fault. Anyway, we're going to go on board and have a look at Paul Milne and Steve Knight. These two, a couple of laps ago, were looking rather close, it must be said. They're about a second or two apart. They make that about 3 or 4 now. Steve Knight opting for the super soft tyre. I'm not sure if that is going to be the strategy he wants to go for later on into the race. That's certainly bold. I think they're going to be certainly struggling later on, but we'll see if he can make that work. Paul Milne running in P7 at the moment, seems to have the measure on Steve. He looked good in qualifying, did Paul. It just hasn't quite come to fruition, unfortunately, in race 1, but that is what the reverse grid race is for. We know Paul's got some decent pace underneath him, so with that higher starting position in race 2, let's see what Paul can make of this weekend just yet. We're going to go back aboard with David Shelley at the moment. He is clear of the likes of Jack Cotton and Guy Swarbrick, but is not quite there with Colin Keefe and Alan Matthews just yet. Those two drivers out in front, lapping in the low 111s in Colin's case, low 112s in Alan's case as well. So Colin building up that gap, as we mentioned before. And David Shelley is matching Alan Matthews at this moment in time. So I suspect Alan and David could be on for a bit of a battle later on, perhaps, as we see how do they manage their tyres, how do they manage their fuel load. Driver fatigue comes into play as well. We've still got over half of this race to go. Any battles are certainly not over yet, and I think David is going to be in the mix one way or the other. Let's just wait and see what that will be. We go back aboard, though, with the aforementioned Alan Matthews. David is not too far behind at all there. I love this camera view. You can see all the way down from Cox to basically the run down to Stowe. I mean, you can get a good idea of what's going to happen down the Hanger Straight as you see those cars negotiate. Maggotts, Beckett's and Chapel as well. So it is a really nice camera angle of getting a good picture of what is going on in the race, because you see so much of the field as well, especially when we're all nice and bunched up like we are in this race. A good effort from everyone so far. On board with Alan Matthews. Colin slightly building that gap up now as we approach this phase of the race. We're only 5 laps in, such is the nature of this ultra long lap, but we're on nearly half race time anyway, half race distance. It has certainly flown by. Colin Keefe on the medium compound of tyres. We mentioned earlier on he was going to be looking a little bit worse away at the start of the race, and it certainly seems to be the case. The car didn't seem to be responding in the way that he would have wanted. Things weren't looking amazing in terms of the grip levels he was receiving from the car. But now you'd have to say, now he's able to break away from Alan Matthews, those tyres are going to be nice and warmed up. I wonder if he is struggling with cool down though at some of the later parts of the lap. That could be the case, somewhere towards the end of the straight, maybe, not quite sure. But at this point in the race, the medium compound tyre should be coming into its own now, really. It should be able to break away. He should be able to set decent times, comparable times to the soft compound tyre runners, as he already is doing so, just owing to how comfortable he is out on track. But the car should be capable of even better compared to the soft compound tyre. As the race progresses, that soft is going to start dropping off. The medium should be looking good. I think the main litmus test of that will be, yes, he's breaking away from Alan Matthews ever so slightly, but can he start to catch up to Matt Daly? Matt Daly is in a good position here. Obviously, he had that brief battle with David before, had a bit of contact with David as well. Good to see he hasn't received the drive-through penalty for that. So the accident clearly happened just after race start. But he's not had to work those soft compound tyres hard, has Matt Daly. He was able to break away, had a bit of pressure early on, as I say, and then it's just been smooth sailing from here on out. He don't think he's gone to sleep there. He's only 7 seconds in the lead. He's still very much in the same race as everyone else. But the soft compound tyre can be extended out a little bit later on into the race, especially if he doesn't have to push that much. So he could be keeping a bit in reserve in preparation for a potential fight with Colin Keefe. Let's just see what he's able to do as we go. There's a bit of a split strategy here. It's going to be very interesting between our two front runners. As we're on board with Colin Keefe at the moment, we're going to stay on board with him for this lap, because it's looking like a rather good lap, it must be said. This lap would have seen Colin Keefe with an impressive time in qualifying, of course. It wouldn't have quite been on pole, but it was only be a few tenths off that. Previous lap for Colin was a 2:11.7, his best lap so far, a 2:11.5. He's lost a bit of time through Loop, heading through Village Loop and Aintree, so maybe not quite going to be the ultra-fast lap that we saw a few laps ago, but still an impressive one nonetheless in the mid-2:11s. He's actually second fastest car out on track at the moment. Fastest is Matt Daly. That 2:11.1 is a previous lap, his best lap in the 2:10s. So Matt Daly currently absolutely in a class of his own in this race, running very nicely indeed. And this bodes well for his championship, because not quite sure if you missed out on a couple of rounds. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to participate, so I do apologise for that one. In Singapore, he got a couple of podiums to his name, didn't appear to be there for Monza. So he's on the back foot ever so slightly in terms of championship points. Now, these aren't the longest championships we've hosted for these championships. It's only an 8-round season, so we're not far off the halfway point already. We're past quarter distance, and we'll be at the end of the race in a fortnight's time, which is the Circuit of the Americas. We will have passed half championship completion, if you will. And Matt Daly is currently not quite at the top end of the mix in terms of the championship standings. He is running in P6 in the championship, 33 points. So a couple of race wins here could make the world a difference, or at least even one race win could make a massive change to his championship hopes. We're on board, though, with Colin Keefe, the man currently not leading the championship, but doing a very good job of being up there and in the mix. It is Colin Keefe running P3, 90. Whoa, that is Alan Matthews there. Alan Matthews, well held there. We had Julietta at a 45-degree angle, just caught in the last part of the frame of that vantage point there from that camera. So glad you saw that as he headed through. Look, we've seen that in the past, mainly in the Alpha 75s and GTA 1750s, the old classics. But yeah, that Julietta is certainly going to need an alignment, I suspect, after that one, as it would have slammed back down onto the tarmac. Yeah, taking a bit too much out the sausage curve there, and you get punished for it. I think Alan lost a little bit of time, but not too much, all things considered there. So well done to Alan for keeping his cool after that one. What that does mean for Alan, though, is David Chelly's ever so slightly closer. He's running in P4 is David, and he's 1.8 seconds behind. On that last lap, he was in the 2:11s was David, and we have Alan Matthews in 2:13s on the last lap. So it's going to be close running between these two as David gets ever so slightly closer. That slipstream effect gets stronger. The pressure builds for Alan Matthews. A fight is very much on, ladies and gentlemen, as we have a look at what's going on at the front end of the field. Well, Alan Matthews has certainly not been able to keep up with Colin Keefe. He's in a bit of no man's land at the moment as we've got David closing in, but he seems to have made good progress heading into Brooklands and Luffield, and did Alan. So far that battle is kind of ebbing and flowing, but Matt Daly, 7.3 seconds ahead of Colin Keefe, is absolutely flying along at the moment. You'd think that soft compound tyre, usually about 17 minutes into the race, no matter what championship we're in, is when you start to see a major difference in the tyre strategies, when you start to see the harder wearing tyres at most circuits begin to show their true colours. They start to look like the more ideal tyre to be on during the race. But Matt Daly just setting purple sectors on this lap on that soft compound tyre. He is looking good, is Matt, as we do have a bit of clear running for Matt now as he runs it down into Clubber. It went a little bit wrong for Alan Matthews over that sausage curve there that you can see in the left-hand corner of the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Matt is looking cool, calm and collected, it must be said. Purple sector on this lap. This lap is looking to be a 2:12, so losing a bit through the final parts of the lap, potentially saving a bit in terms of tyres, maybe lifting and coasting to try and make sure he's got enough fuel to bring it home. Very fuel-thirsty circuit, this track, of course. Either way, things looking good for Matt Daly at the moment. We go on board then with Colin Keefe, having less than ideal race start, of course, given his qualifying, but still making up for it in the end. Medium compound tyre, as we say, and looking good as well. No improvements on this lap, but it is Jack Hodson who's actually setting some decent sectors at the moment. I haven't spoken too much about Jack after his earlier battle with Guy Strawberry, which sees Jack winning out there. Guy having some fortunate issues heading into Magneton Beckett before, and Jack has looked fairly composed after that, it must be said. Had no real pressure, has just been lapping comfortably in the midfield with a nice bit of clean air. 2:12.6 on that previous lap. That's his best lap so far. Every sector an improvement. So good consistency here for Jack Hodson. That bodes well for the reverse grid race coming up in a few minutes' time. Strong, consistent lapping from Jack Hodson, and only a 10th down off the previous lap, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. We've got some spectators there as well who don't seem very interested in the racing action by the looks of things. They're They're more occupied with what is, well, the camera, I suspect. Yeah, that seems to be, oh, we're going to miss it again. There they are. Yeah, look at them. They're just looking at the camera. That's less than sporting. Show some support. That is very ominous, though. That's very good. Some of them are levitating. That is an expensive grandstand if it offers that. Of course, that is just a bit of a carryover of old game design where the sprites will point towards you. But either way, very creepy. One of those just ominous sights where it just occupies most of your brain. Anyway, we come on board with Matt Daly leading this race. 2 minute 10.9 on the lap. We're still in the 2:10s. He is looking very happy indeed. Of course, an experienced real-life racer as well as Matt Daly using some of that experience in this race as well. There we have his rival in the background just joining onto the same straight. There is Colin Knief a few seconds down, and then we have Alan Matthews and David Shelley. The battle we thought might have been brewing for a few moments and a few laps now is very much ready to commence here, as we have David Shelley having a look at the outside running into Brooklands here. We see them heading through the corner, not quite yet, but he darts across to the inside to David and takes the corner there. Fantastic bold move from David late on. A bit of contact between the two, but what's a bit of touring car action without some rubbing is racing. That's the old mantra there. And we see David getting head now up onto the podium scoring positions for David, but I suspect Alan Matthews is going to want to fight this one back. He certainly looked poised, ready to battle, and now we're going to see that as we head through COP to get the ominous onlooking spectators once again. I don't know why I've only just really noticed them now. As we head through Maggots Beck, it's David ahead of Alan this time around, and it's great form from David here. What a recovery drive. Let's not forget he was in the pits at the end of lap 1 and now finds himself running it in P3. A mighty effort there. This time though it's going to be Alan Matthews with the slipstreams. Let's see if he can do anything to fight for this position back. It's looking like the gap between the two cars might be just a little bit too big. Let's see anyway as we head towards the braking zone now, heading through Stowe. Alan Matthews echoes every move that David makes to see if he can build that pressure and force a mistake out in front. Out in front though, there is Colin Knief heading through Club. Even further in front, you just saw a glimpse of that yellow liveried car. There is Matt Daly as well. Our front runners in this race have looked oh so competitive, have looked very consistent. Hats off to them all. This has been a great drive from some of our competitors as we get back onto the start-finish straight, the Hamilton straight. And a few seconds separate them. No, sorry, not a few seconds, a few tenths separate these drivers now. Meanwhile, out in front, I should mention, on that last lap, Matt Daly, double sector 1. It was a 2 minute 10.7, the fastest lap of the race so far. So tyre wear not looking like much of a concern, at least not for Matt Daly. The fuel load gets lighter, the car gets quicker. He is looking rather unbeatable at this point, it must be said. Matt Daly is certainly risen to the task here of trying to climb up the championship order. Running in P6, as I say, he will jump ahead of Alan Matthews. He will jump ahead of Jack Compton. He will get a lot closer, or at least quite a bit closer, to Colin Knief after this race. So that will be P4 in the standings for Matt Daly after this race. But of course, we'll have a look at how things are shaping up after race 1 of round 3 in the interim in race 2. Later on this evening, a couple of minutes to go now on the clock for this, the first race of the evening before we have that reverse grid action. And there we're on board with Matt Daly heading through Maggots Beck. It's one of the most infamous corner complexes in Britain, if not in the world. A fantastic test of bravery and the technical driving skills, as well as a true test of the chassis and the platform of the car as well. It's a very high speed complex of corners, so you've got to chain together absolutely pitch perfect really to try and have a good run down towards a Stowe. Not a traditional overtaking corner as such, but it's so easy to have it go wrong. I'm talking about in Formula cars, that is. Of course, a slightly smaller car, but you got plenty more overtaking opportunities, and that has certainly been the case at a few this year. And over the past few seasons as well, as we are still on board with Matt Daly. He builds up that gap between him and Colin to near enough makes no difference. 10 seconds now, formidable form for Matt Daly, but of course he is going to be fighting from the back in the reverse grid action. So let's see how things go. Everyone has made it through pretty much unscathed, it must be said, in this race. Only a couple little bits of front wing damage here or there. It's been a nice quiet race in terms of what the cars need from the body shop, so I'm sure Sure, everyone could rest easy there. Matt Daly, though, takes a bit too much out of the sausage curb. We've seen that once already with Alan Matthews. This time it was at the loop for Matt Daly. He doesn't want to do that too often. He doesn't want to spin round, because while 10 seconds is big in terms of racing distance, in terms of recovery distance, 10 seconds is absolutely nothing. 10 seconds will be swallowed up very quickly indeed. So Matt Daly doesn't want to have too many issues like that, especially not on what will be the penultimate lap of this race now. As we see plenty of racing action going on just behind these two drivers, though, and that is David Chelly and Alan Matthews fighting on once again. The back end on David's car stepping out. What a fantastic bit of a camera work there to catch that through Luffield. That looked absolutely ace. And now it's going to be a compromise run on the exit out of Luffield for David Chelly. So let's see how does Alan Matthews negotiate this. We go back on to the exit of Woodcote here before we run down towards Copse, and Alan Matthews is just that bit more closer, only 0.2 of a second separating these two cars as the timer hits 0, and it's going to be very wide for Alan Matthews there as David Chelly goes a bit wide to try and defend. Alan Matthews just hooks it around the outside and says, I am still bringing this fight to you no matter where on the track you want to put your car. Run through Maggotts Beck. It's now a couple of tenths lost for Alan Matthews, but I must say David Chelly's car, looking less than comfortable running through those two corners. I think the grip might be starting to drop off now for a few of these drivers on the soft compound tyre. The back end are sliding around in a manner only familiar to Mito QV owners. Just ask me how I know. Anyway, we run it down into Stowe. Late on the brakes there. Is the inside available for Alan Matthews? It's ever so slightly available. He's able to get the nose closer, but it's going to be a case of who gets the best run now into the braking zone for the upcoming left-hander. He darts across, does Alan Matthews, takes the inside line there, late on the brakes. Great move from Alan Matthews. That gives him the inside for Club as well, the exit of Club rather, although he darts outside a little bit wide there. There's contact between the two. Nowhere David Chelly could go, really. They are both able to carry on, which is the most important thing. In the end, it's Alan Matthews who still stays out on top, so no change of position there, but that could have been so much worse. David getting very brave there. That didn't necessarily seem on, as they are able to carry on. Again, no change of position. Elbows are very much coming out now, ladies and gentlemen. The battle that we've been expecting for a little while is very much here and present as David goes up onto two wheels, rides that sausage curb, and now we have the run through the loop, through Aintree, and on to the Wellington Straight. Once again, it's going to be David right there with the slipstream as he tries to get a decent position as we run down into Brooklands once again. What a battle this has proven to be now. It's going to have, who's going to go late on the brakes here? It's going to be Alan defending from the inside. Is he going to open up the inside accidentally, though, on exit? We'll see. He doesn't, but it's looking very close. David is poised there to try and get the position on the exit on the run through Woodcote, taking that inside line, hugging the curbs there. As we see, not able to get past it yet is David. This is going to come down to the wire, I suspect, ladies and gentlemen, though. Speaking of coming down to the wire, it's looking very close towards the end of things for Matt Daly, running through Maggotts Beck. It's now smoke billowing out of the car, out of the tyres rather, as he pushes that car through the S's. And it's been quiet out front comparatively for Matt Daly, but the battles are still continuing on for P3. A crucial position, of course. Major contact between the two drivers as we have Alan Matthews, David Chelly crashing through Maggotts and Beckett. It's David up into P3. He concedes a position. That is great sportsmanship from David there. That is what we like to see. Alan is able to continue on in P3, so no change of position once again, and that surely brings an end to their battling now as we go on board with Matt Daly. This brings an end to his race, and what a race it has been for the car in the yellow livery. Contact earlier on. Could it have been over? It certainly wasn't, as he rounds the final corner to take the checkered flag. Congratulations, Matt Daly. Race 1 victory here at Silverstone. A brilliant drive from start to finish, completely in control. Colin Knief then brings it home on the medium compounded tyres, bringing it home P2. Great battle in the end. Speaking of great battles, Alan Matthews, David Chelly. It was looking very, very close there, right on the edge. But in the end, it's Alan Matthews who wins out to round out the podium. P3 for Alan, P4 for David. Fantastic recovery dive for David, of course, given he was in the pit lane on lap 1. And that's our top 4. In just a moment, then we're going to have Jack Hodson coming home here to round out the top 5 as he heads down the Hamilton Straight to bring home the car there, crossing the line. And then we have Guy Swarbrick will be coming home P6, Paul Millman P7, and Steve Knight P8 as well. These two actually looking quite close together, all things considered, towards the end of this race. as we have, I think, is that an attempt at some... I think that's an attempt at some victory donuts from Colin Keith. Unfortunately, the camera hasn't quite caught him. It might catch him now. So sorry if I've just missed them, Colin. That will be actually the first victory donuts of this season. So I'm very sorry if I've just missed them. But certainly not going to miss it. Guy Swarbrick coming home. The checkered flag livery car sees the checkered flag as it comes home at P6. Then we have Paul Millman not too far behind, coming home P7, but not too far behind him is Steve Knight as well on the super soft tyre. Bold choice. Not quite sure if it worked out for him. Let's see, though, as we have our two final runners in this race crossing the line, rounding out our 8 finishes here at Silverstone. We got some victory drifts from Matt Daly, got some rallycross from Colin Keith. This is not quite how you'd expect to see these cars usually driven. It's forming the drift now. That's an impressive feat given we're in a front-wheel drive car. But good to see the effort nonetheless. And we will be joining you in just a few moments' time as we get ready for the reverse grid race here at Silverstone. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, on the grid, ready for race 2, the reverse grid race. So here's our starting order. It is Guy Swarbrick. It's Paul Millman, Guy Swarbrick. Then we have Jack Hodson, David Shirley, Alan Matthews, Colin Keith, Matt Daly, and Steve Knight, rounding out our starting positions for race 2. An enthralling race 1. I am ready now for some more action here at Silverstone. It never disappoints, and I think the reverse grid race is going to deliver even more as we see the revs begin to rise, the drivers making sure they've got their bike point on the clutch all memorised and ready to go. It now all comes down to this launch, hugely important, the reverse grid race like this. The lights begin to tick over, and we have 6 red lights on the gantry. We are away for race 2 here at Silverstone. Paul Millman, a bit of a burnout there on the launch, it must be said. Jack Hodson, meanwhile, getting a good getaway as we run down towards Abbey now. Defensive there from Paul and Millman. Guy Swarbrick stays in P2. David tried to worm his way up to P3 is going to be pretty much side by side with Jack Cotton. Jack Cotton's actually able to win out here. Actually have a look down the inside of Guy Swarbrick. The door was left open. He goes for it, but Collins also notices a bit of an inside line there as well. But it looks to be Jack Cotton poised and in a very good position here, it must be said, as he actually goes a little bit wide on the exit through Aintree. That costs him big time. Costs him speed, costs him position. He's going to have to continue wide because it'll be an unsafe rejoin otherwise. And there is Alan Matthews. Jack Hodson fighting for P2 at one point now, tumbling down to P7 in the end. Disaster for Jack Hodson. This means well for Guy Swarbrick, though, who takes the outside line here. That leaves the door open for for Colin Knief. Matt Daly says thank you very much as well. It's second down into fourth for Guy. Matt Daly, though, seems to be struggling with the back end of the car. Everyone now on the soft compound tyre, including Colin Knief. It didn't work out then, that medium. My assessment completely wrong. So, sorry. Anyway, the back ends of these cars squirming around. Let's not forget the fuel loads have shot right back up. The weight has come back into the car. And we're seeing Guy there running a little bit wide through comps. That gives the position to David as we have Paul Milman and Colin Knief. A big coming together on the exit of Cops. Two drivers potentially not checking their mirrors. Not sure who was the instigator there. Either way, that is a disaster for Paul Milman. Colin Knief actually able to continue on there, but Paul Milman has substantial damage on pretty much all areas of his car by the looks of things. Yep, there you go. If there's evidence, if you never need to see it, smashed headlights on these cars usually indicates they've had a fairly nasty shunt. Either way, we're going to continue on. There's going to be Matt Daly leading this race ahead of David Shelley, and then Guy Swarbrick, and then Colin Knief and Alan Matthews are top four for the time being. Guy Swarbrick was in the top five. He's just lost that position, though, to Jack Hodson, who's having a good recovery here. Made up two positions already. Now wants to try and bring that fight towards Alan Matthews and Colin Knief potentially. Let's see what he can do in this race. David has shown that you can have a good recovery drive here at Silverstone. Let's see if Jack can replicate that feat in this race. Half a second separating Matt Daly and David as we run down towards the first corner. Things are looking good for Matt Daly. He did well in race one, of course, very well indeed. It looked good in qualifying. Qualifying, he was not quite in the mix earlier on in the session, but it all just kept, well, I say not in the mix, he wasn't quite on top, but it all just came together really late on into the session. He showed what he really had under his right foot as we have another collision for Paul Milman there, this time with Guy Swarbrick. It is further disaster for Paul after a decent qualifying. Race one wasn't quite as he would have expected, and race two is not looking to have gone his way either. Let's see though as we go back on board with Matt Daly under pressure from David. The back end on David's car really not doing what he'd ask of it as he heads into Brooklands, really not complying with the driver's request and dropping back as a result. 0.7 of a second separating the yellow and white cars. Now David will have to be careful with too many more instances like that, and Colin Knief is going to be very much hot on his heels trying to close up that gap and find a way past as we run through Cops. Once again, Cops where we saw cars having a bit of coming together pretty earlier on in the race, just a lap ago, of course, very long lap here. But we see Colin is able to make it through unscathed this time around, running in P3 at the moment, just ahead of Alan Matthews and a little bit behind David Shelley as well. In a couple of laps, we're going to have a clearer idea of what the pace is looking like in these cars. Let's see what Colin can really do. Now, I thought, honestly, genuinely think on that medium compound tyre, he would be pretty much class of the field. The car should have no issues in terms of grip later on, but it seems to be the soft works very well, so those lower track temperatures potentially helping out tenfold there. So let's see what Colin can do now with the softer compound tyre. Car early on in the race, the early phase of the race is certainly looking stronger for Colin than it was in race one. It looked pretty unbearable, it must be said, with that medium compound tyre. And things are looking better now for Colin, at least so far in this race. He's putting that pressure on David and Matt up front. We're going to have another blockbuster battle between the top three. All of the podium sitters are going to be fighting out, and that's what we'd like to see. The reverse grid race always delivers some brilliant action. To separate these two cars now as we run down towards Brooklands once again. One of the prime overtaking opportunities here at Silverstone. Such a complex part of the track. So many options, so many lines to take. And you've got that nice heavy braking zone to add to that as well. All these drivers are looking very composed as they navigate that part of the lap. The lap times are looking good, it must be said. I think we've got a bit of experience under our belts now from race 1. And Colin is on top in terms of performance at the moment. It's a 2:10.8 on the last lap for Colin, only the second full race pace lap of the race. You expect around about 10-11 laps here at Silverstone because each lap is about 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes long. And Colin is looking poised to take what would be the extra point for fastest lap, a 2-minute 10.8 as it stands, and it's looking predicted in the bottom left hand of the screen, a 2-minute 10.7. So I think he's actually just scrubbed that off ever so slightly heading through Magnus Beckett's. But things are looking good for the car in the black, white and orange livery there. In the background is Alan Matthews, still certainly in the mix, only a few seconds behind. Anything can happen between the top 3. We've seen that before. Let's not count out likes of Alan and Jack Hodson as well. All taking up pretty much the same line through Stowe there. Alan Matthews in the background taking a slightly wider line. Let's see as we head through Club. But now that sausage curb there, it is a very fine line. You just want to kiss it ever so slightly in order to have the best line. If there's one little bit of racing experience I do have, it's in my days of karting, and you trying to take as much curve as possible without completely annihilating the kart is certainly a skill, and there is time to be found there. But overstep the mark by 1 centimetre, 2 centimetres, you're going to find yourself in a world of pain. You might have a bit more margin in a touring car like this, but still very much the same boat, especially through Club. You want to try and kiss that sausage curve there to try and get the best line as you run towards the second phase of the corner, but it's going to cost you big time if you jump up onto 2 wheels, if you absolutely hammer the curb, as Alan Matthews discovered in race 1, as Matt Daly discovered at the loop as well in race 1 as well, actually. So it is certainly a method to find a bit of extra time, but it can go very wrong indeed. The gap in total covers just under 3 seconds between these top 3. It is a 2.5 seconds pretty much. Very close running indeed, and consistent at this point as well. We've been a few laps, making pretty much 3 laps of race under full racing conditions now. 4 if you count the start lap as well, and these 3 have not relented in any way, shape or form. And they're not under full battling, but they're certainly, you know, they're very much aware of each other. And despite that, they are not slowing each other down as they continue on. It is impressive to see their times looking as strong as they are. Alan Matthews in the 211s as well, the high 211s, but these top 3 here in the low 111s, or in the case of Matt Daly, he takes the fastest lap of this race so far. No, sorry, he doesn't. He matches it with a 2-minute 10.886. Colin Knief for 2-minute 10.832. So very consistent between the top 3 as well. They are certainly a bit of a perfect match here as they fight on. And this will be a good fight for the championship as well. Speaking of the championship, let's have a look at that. It's Colin Knief in the lead of the championship. He jumps ahead of Andy Craig, not here this evening, unfortunately, as is David Jelly, in fact. So it's now Colin Knief, 79 points to his name. David, 76 points to his name. And we have Andy Craig with 70. P3 in the championship. Then Matt Daly jumps up to P4, as we mentioned earlier, 58 points to his name. He should, as if things stay the way they are, jump ahead of Andy as well. Then we have Alan Matthews, P5, 48 points to his name. Jack Hodson, P6, 46. And then we have Paul Millman, P7, 34. Will Inglis, P8, 25. He's not here this evening, apparently. He is not. I think he's also under the weather, actually. So get well soon, Will, as well. As we have Steve Knight then, P9, 23 points to his name. Guy Swarbrick, P10, 17. And Alex Smith, P11 with 12. So 3 rounds into this series by the end of the race 2 that we are watching along with at the moment. Nearly halfway through the championship already, and still all to play for. It's certainly not decided yet. Mathematically, anyone is in the fight at this point. And what a fight it is proving to be so far. Top 3 covered by 1.9 seconds as we exit Woodcote now. Sorry, as we run into Cops rather. Back end on David's car, stepping out there. Maybe it's just his driving style, maybe he suits a bit of oversteer. I know I certainly do. but it looks to be that scrubbed off a bit of time for David as they go near enough side by side to David and Colin. It's going to be the entry into Maggots there. The door was just about open, but it was only as wide as a Giulietta TCR. That being the Giulietta TCR that Colin is driving, and Colin has to relent there as they make contact. Proper touring car action that as we head back onto the hanger straight rather. As they exit the Chapel curve. At this time, Colin still in the slipstream is going to dart to the outside line here. Not too traditional. Actually dives back to the inside there. A late switchback. A bit of a dupe there from Colin Knief. Did he go too late into the corner, too deep into it? I think he might have done. Has scrubbed off some time there. Still side by side with David. Did he get the better run though? I think he did. As we're going to enter the braking zone now for Club in just a moment. That gives him the inside line as well. A bit of a switchback attempted from David Shelley though. It doesn't matter because in the end it's Colin Knief who wins out in this battle for the time being. Only a tenth to separate them though. The fight's still very much on. As we start the next lap, it's Colin in P2, David in P3, but David with a good run heading into the first corner. There's contact between the two. We've seen contact there in the previous race. The same incident happening as we have David backing out of it this time around, and it is David in P3, Colin in P2. All of this battling is allowing Matt Daly to absolutely walk away with it. It is now Matt Daly 4 seconds clear of Colin Knief, the man currently in P2. And Matt Daly is going to revert to race 1 default pretty much. He should be able to break away, build up a bit of a gap and relax the car, relax the tyres, relax himself, and build up a nice margin and cruise the car home. Meanwhile, it's going to be Colin and David fighting for it as we head into Brooklands. Once again, the back end of David's car under braking, really squirming around. Not sure if that's a brake bias thing or just how harsh and aggressive he's having to go on the brakes in order to try and get a dive done and try and get ahead of Colin Knief. Either way, the car is looking like it just doesn't quite want to communicate with David at this point in the race. Just about to head towards half race distance as well, so we've still got about 5 or 6 more laps to go here at Silverstone. So let's hope there hasn't been too much taken out the tyres just yet, because this is an enthralling battle. This is fantastic stuff. 4 seconds between Matt Daly and Colin Knief, 0.3 of a second. Make that 2 between Colin Knief and David Shelley. The back end still squirming around. It looks brilliant, I must be said. I'm going to go with my excuses. That's why I'd like to hang the back end out on the Mito when I'm on the track days, because it looks good. Ignore the fact that I am incapable of driving the car. I think it looks great. David certainly is capable of driving the car though, and is certainly capable of bringing this fight to Colin Knief, and what a fight it has been so far. We're going to head into Stowe. This time things looking ever so slightly more comfortable. Just look at how much Colin's having to push the front end of that car. The tyres billowing smoke out as he goes into the corner at absolutely full chat into the braking zone through Vale and Club there. Both drivers opting for the sausage curb route that kicks the car up into the air. It slams back down, and that was a very, very testy stuff indeed there for both drivers. That could have gone very wrong indeed, but they are able to continue on and start the next lap of the race. 0.3 of a second separating the two cars. There is David Shelley still putting the pressure on. Colin can certainly not rest easy, unlike Matt Daly, who has just gone purple in the final sector. Personal best with the second sector, of course, the second sector being where he made up all of his time in qualifying, and that has given him a substantial gap now, nearly 5 seconds. That last lap, a 2-minute 10.7. That would have put him on pole in qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. That is a blistering lap time from Matt Daly out in front. Very much not out in front of David, though, is Colin Knief. It's only 0.2 of a second. They're pretty much side by side. They're about to be side by side at some point, I can presume, as well, as we head into Brooklands once again. The number 1 liveried car looking, I'm not going to say worse for wear, but let's see how those soft compound tyres fare later on into this race. He had the comfort of the mediums earlier on and might not have the same luxury. Might not have the same luxury later on into this race. Impressive stuff from David there on the previous lap, actually, as we head into just about to head into the final 10 minutes of this race. The back end still flying out there. That's always going to catch me out because it looks impressive and it looks a bit scary from outside. Those of you who will know just how scary it can feel from the inside of the car as well. Going opposite lock in a front-wheel drive car is scary, but also really satisfying when it goes well. It is fantastic stuff. I mean, the nice thing about a front-wheel drive car stepping out is it is arguably it's quite simple. You haven't got many options in terms of correcting it, which, you know, can be bad because you haven't got many options in terms of correcting it. If you stamp on the brakes, it's going to go even worse. But the correction is you just turn into the slide and just absolutely plant your foot in it. You just let the car try and correct itself, let the front axle drag the car back into shape. And David is no stranger to that on this lap, by the looks of things. I was going to say, yeah, he's just gone purple despite the battling he's currently undertaking. So he's putting that pressure on Colin Knief. Colin is able to respond to it, though. A 2 minute 10.8 on the last lap, pretty much matching his best lap of the race so far. A mighty drive from Colin Knief here. Matt Daly, a 2 minute 10.5. I think I'm right in saying that is the fastest lap of the weekend so far. All done in the final part of the lap. Once again, a 36.8 through the final sector for Matt Daly. An impressive lap there from the yellow liveried car. That sees him pretty much clear of the rest of the field. Another 25 points potentially coming Matt Daly's way. That will bode well for the championship. That will bring him right back into the fight, exactly what he needed, and will, I suspect, have the likes of David and Colin scratching their heads ever so slightly as we've just gone back on board with David's car still stepping out of line, under braking into the corner once again. It is becoming slowly but surely the only rear-wheel drive Giulietta in the mix here at Silverstone. It is looking less than ideal, but it certainly looked good. Mighty consistency from these drivers, I should add. Not only have we got the consistency of Matt Daly out in front, let's not forget, not too long ago was in the midst battle, but Colin and David doing a mighty job of fighting so close together for so long in this race. Now, for most of the race distance, they have been attached to each other and have shown no signs of relenting just yet. Elsewhere in the field, those we see David going up onto two wheels. We do have some fighting going on. Paul Milburn, not an ideal race one. Race two certainly didn't start the way he would have wanted as well. He's got substantial damage on his car, don't forget, so it's a mighty feat to see him still in this race. He is currently enjoying a bit of a battle with Guy Swarbrick. Now, he did have some commentators curse earlier on. Hopefully don't bring it Guy's way once again as we head through Stowe. 1 second separating these two cars. On the last lap, it was Guy Swarbrick in the 2.16s, Paul Milburn in the 2.15s. The best lap for Paul, a 2.14, for Guy, a 2.15. Let's see, though, this later phase of the race, because this final phase that we're entering now, will Guy's car, with a bit of a healthier aero package, shall we say, look after its tyres a bit better? That's what we'd expect. We'd expect less scrubbing as the tyres braid over the tarmac less, because the car is able to plant more downforce onto the tyres. You'd expect to see, perhaps at least, the car looking after the tyres a little bit better. Let's see if Guy does have an answer for Paul as we enter the final part of this race. Still only 0.3 of a second separating our cars in P2 and P3. A fantastic drive. Make that 0.2 between these two now. On that last lap for David, a 2.11.0 for Colin, a 2.11.3, and there's still so little in it in terms of their best lap as well. It is anyone's game at this point. And let's not forget, if these two do have a typical touring car battle and have a bit of a coming together, there is Alan Matthews sat in the background as well. He is still very much in the mix here. Alan Matthews' main priority at this point in time is probably to try and build up a better gap to Jack Hodgson in terms of the championship. There's only 2 points separating them. There's only a position separating them in this race as well. There's a few seconds, but it's P4 for Alan Matthews, P5 for Jack Hodgson. So Alan will be hoping, well, I don't think he'll be wishing for these two to have a collision, but I think he certainly wouldn't say no to all of a sudden promoting himself a position or two up on to the podium. As we see these two really pushing on now. Anything Colin does, David echoes, just building that pressure as these cars are going to be experiencing similar tyre wear. They've got similar levels of damage, being quite light. The cars, of course, I imagine they've got a fairly similar setup, because you probably want a little bit less wing here for Silverstone, giving you slightly better top speeds, of course. But it is anyone's game at this fight now. There's only 3 points between these two drivers in the championship. Let's have a recap of how things have looked so far for the two drivers. David Shelley, 2 podiums in round 1 at Monza. The back end on his car stepping out once again. It's fantastic seeing that. The red and white liveried car there echoing the old Alfa Romeo Formula 1 livery. That is consigned to history, unfortunately. But it is a magnificent sight to see this car sliding around. It is, I believe, the old boosted motorsport livery. There is, yeah, on the side. That was formerly driven by Andrew Whitehead. We've taken the car out of storage then and passed it on to David to fight at the front with, of course, with its previous driver. This car, no stranger to fighting for podiums and fighting for wins, and it is very much doing the same thing here once again. Maybe it's livery. That's a disservice to the drivers, but you never know. Maybe it just is. Maybe everyone knows red cars go faster, and this car's got a bit of red on it, so could well be that. 6 tenths separating these two cars. They got the build ever so slightly. That earlier slide earlier in the lap did cost David a couple of tenths, and Colin just about has the measure now. Of course, the further away Colin is able to get from David, the slightly less effective the slipstream becomes, the slightly less pressure is on Colin's shoulders, and it's all a bit of a snowball effect, really. If Colin can keep his cool at this phase of the race, things will be looking slightly more positive for him. Particularly as well if David is squirming around a bit now. The tyres are going to be starting to get a little bit overheated. Bear in mind, there's less rubber on them already, so there's less mass of tyre to heat up, and you get them hotter quicker, they lose grip quicker. It's very much a vicious cycle there. So Colin has built up that 1 second gap now, and David's car is just starting to look a little bit less pleasurable to drive. It's starting to look like it's not quite the race car it once was earlier on, but that is perhaps no surprise. David and Colin have been pushing each other for so long. The back end kicks out once again, and as I say, David has been pushing on, and maybe the car just starting to relent now. Nonetheless, a very impressive drive from not only David but Colin as well. Meanwhile, having a look at the battling we've got further down the field, just over 2 minutes to go in this race. Still half second separating Paul Millen and Guy Swarbrick. Guy seeming to have the measure at this point in the race. 4 tenths of a second faster on the previous lap. Personal best, sector 1 and sector 3. So I think Guy, one of those drivers who's been able to maintain the tyres well. We saw this in race 1. Maintain the tyres well, just like Matt Daly did. And the fuel load gets lighter, the car gets lighter, and the time can still be made late on in the lap. He has, late on in the race, he has just gone over the curb running through the farm curve, running through village there as well, and that has caused him to jump up into the air, so he's lost a bit of time as a result, and it was looking a little bit closer once again. Still a couple of laps to go in this race. Let's see what happens yet. The next lap will be the penultimate lap of this race. Matt Daly has been doing an almighty job, and just as I was alluding to then, with the times improving for some cars out front, we've got Matt Daly with a purple sector through sector 2 there. His personal best, it could very much be about to be made here, as we have a 2-minute 10.4 for Matt Daly to head into Stowe. And 58.2 middle sector there, a very nice lap potentially on the cards here for Matt Daly. Just seems to be that Matt has had that extra bit of confidence in the car this weekend. Seems to have just, when it really matters, find the extra couple of tenths. Let's see as he crosses the line now. So 2-minute 10.9. He lost out through that final sector there. It was a 37-second final sector, where we well know that Matt Daly has a 36-second final sector in him. So that's a shame for Matt on that lap, but let's see what he can do on this lap now as well, which is now the penultimate lap of this race. Yeah, it seems to be the case that for the most part Matt Daly is competitive, or rather his competitors can keep up with Matt Daly, but Matt just seems to have that extra couple of tenths when it really matters. At the phase of the race like this, when he's able to jump on the fact that Colin and David are battling each other, he can bring out that extra couple of tenths. In qualifying, late on, he brought out the extra couple of tenths there, and that has made the difference here this weekend. 6 seconds now separate Matt Daly and Colin Knief. Colin Knief and David Shelley separated by 1.3, which is a comparable chasm compared to what separated them just a few moments ago. Not just a small gap, an absolute canyon, if you will, separating them. And then you drop down to P4, about 9 seconds separating David and Alan Matthews. Still a good drive nonetheless for Alan in P4. Then we have Jack Hodson as well, another solid finish. Good few points there. Likewise for Paul Milman, Guy Swarbrick and Steve Knight as well. All points on the cards, of course, for our 8 runners in this weekend. And it's been a good weekend overall, I'd say, in terms of the driving standards. Been a few elbows out moments there, but it's touring cars. There's going to be elbows out moments. And it's certainly made for some fantastic racing action. As we see Matt Daly on the penultimate lap of this race. He's just negotiated Maggotts Beckett's and is getting ready to head through to the final lap of this race now. You can see there just in the background the gap between Colin Knief and Dave Jelly, ever so slightly bigger than it has been previously, but still has been a very enjoyable battle to behold there. Got a little bit too close to comfort at some points, but I'm sure they'll shake hands, move on and get ready for some more enjoyable action later on into the series. A series which is tumbling by very quickly indeed, it must be said. As I say, I apologise for missing so much of it so far, as we have Matt Daly now starting the final lap of this race. So yes, you've got to enjoy Silverstone and touring cars, and fear not, if you want more Silverstone action next week, it will be the single-seaters at Silverstone before we move on to the Circuit of the Americas in the touring cars as well, which is not the first time actually that the Giulietta TCR car has been seen on American soil. Probably absolutely bewildered them, saying, what is that car? It's an Alfa Romeo, it's a small Alfa Romeo hatchback. Of course, Giulietta not sold, Alfa Romeo not on sale at that point in time when the Giulietta was on the market, and it was a sight to behold seeing that car out in America. But this has been a sight to behold as well. Matt Daly, an impressive drive here this weekend at Silverstone. Got a bit of a grand slam actually as he heads through Luffield now, the run through Woodcote. Let's have a quick recap of the rest of the pack while Matt Daly brings the car home there. We've got Colin Knief winning out in this battle against David Shelley in the end, but it was very close indeed. David currently running in P3. And then we have Alan Matthews, P4, Jack Hodson, P5, Paul Milman, P6 there. Let's not forget nursing a very wounded car for the entire duration of this race. On lap 1, it all went wrong, and he's been able to nurse the car home, which is very much a feat within itself. To score points with a car as wounded as it is, to even continue on with a car with no front or rear wing, a mighty impressive drive there. Then we have Guy Swarbrick running in P7, and then Steve Knight still on the Super Softs running in P8. So a couple of points on the board for Steve, and I'm sure he'll be looking to pick up rubber and get ready for the next round at Cota that we've just mentioned. But we go on board with Matt Daly as he heads through Stowe for one last time this weekend. What a drive it has been for Matt Daly. I think we're going to get some proper victory donuts this time round, which I'm very much looking forward to, and I'm sure he is as well, because he'll certainly savour in them, because they are well deserved. As he heads through Club onto the Hamilton Straight for one last time this weekend, it has been Matt Daly, a mighty drive there. Qualifying victory, race 1 victory, and race 2 victory as well. A grand slam for the man in the yellow liveried car there, Matt Daly. Congratulations. Then we have Colin Knief bringing it home P2 after that battle with David Shelley. Race along pretty much. David Shelley rounds out the podium in P3 as well. Then we've got Alan Matthews, not too far behind at all, coming home in P4. And once again, not too far behind really, all things considered. We got Jack Hodson in the mix as well. He'll be rounding out the top 5 of this race now. Come on, let's see what have we got in terms of victory performances. We'll see, but it's Jack Hodson who brings it home in P5. Then we've got a small wait to the likes of Paul Milman, Guy Swarbrick, who are all close together once again, it must be said. And then Steve Knight as well. It's not going to be victory donuts, it's going to be victory drifts though. Echoing what David did during the race. I just think David might have been better off saving it for now. Either way, it looks very good indeed. Have you got a hydraulic handbrake equipped for Matt Daly? Because it looks very eager to spin around. I'm sure he probably has a mighty sim racing setup. I've seen pictures of it actually, so he does have probably does have quite a nice handbrake there. Colin dives into the pits. No victory drifts for Colin. Got some victory drifts for David though, as he was doing in the race, as I said, so he's well versed in this. Got some weaving around in celebration as well for Alan, which is what we like to see. But we're going to have to go on board with our dominant force in Silverstone here, Matt Daly, as he celebrates a well-deserved celebration as well. Through Magnus Beckett, that's what we like to see. Well, that brings an end to the action here in Silverstone. What a race weekend it has been. As I said, Silverstone always delivers. Touring cars always deliver. It was a recipe for success, really. Congratulations to Matt Daly, victor overall there. Took away the most points this weekend. We're back at Silverstone in a week's time with the single-seaters, and a fortnight we move on to the Circuit of the Americas. So I look forward to commentating and streaming with you all very shortly indeed. So thank you very much for watching, and a good night.